In the Middle Ages, gold was the lifeblood of kingdoms. However, lending gold at interest was a death sentence for any soul. The church called it usury. But a family rising in the back streets of Florence found a way to twist these divine laws to their advantage. They invented the Renaissance to launder money, and a very clever method to conceal it. Today, we decipher the dark trade at the origin of the Medici family, how they laundered money through the illusion of currency conversion with forbidden interest, and how they seized all the wealth of the Vatican by making a bloodthirsty pirate the Pope. This is not just a family history. It is the greatest story of cunning in history involving religion, money, and power. If you are ready, meet God's bankers. Welcome to the dark pages of the Golden Throne's archive. For medieval people, hell wasn't an abstraction. It was a physical horror. Even in Dante's depiction of hell, usurers and murderers were shown burning in an eternal fire on the same level. Because, according to the church, charging interest wasn't just stealing money. It was stealing God's time. Time belonged to God, and profiting from it was divine theft. Giovanni de' Medici was about to transform this fear into a financial leverage. The currency conversion system, born in the vaults of the Medici Bank, was the first systematic money laundering operation in history. Money borrowed in Florence was repaid months later in London at a different exchange rate. On paper, there was no interest, only an exchange rate difference. This was the ancestor of modern offshore banking and crypto market operations. Money now moved across the seas like an invisible ghost, without being hindered by the customs duties of kings or the sermons of the Pope. The Medici family managed to deceive God's overseers by camouflaging interest as transaction fees. Money no longer had a homeland, it simply had a new owner. But these were only small parts of a larger plan. The real operation was to be carried out in the heart of Rome. The Medici dynasty couldn't be content with just being bankers. They needed to control the Holy See itself to make their empire bulletproof. By the early 1400s, the papacy was a divided and bankrupt institution. Giovanni de' Medici, amidst this chaos, chose one of history's darkest figures as his puppet, Baldassare Cossa. Cossa was no clergyman. He was a professional pirate who plundered ships in the Mediterranean and stained trade routes with blood. The Medici saw the potential in this pirate's ambition and invested in it. The investment was enormous, but the return would be absolute. Millions of dollars worth of gold, in today's money, were spent to cleanse Cossa of his bloodstains and enthrone him as the 23rd Pope. Cardinals were bought. Armies were bribed. This was not an act of faith, but the most successful crime and venture capital investment in history. In 1410, thanks to the gold of the Medici family, a former pirate ascended the throne as Pope John XXIII. What happened had nothing to do with faith. It was the most successful hostile takeover operation in history. Yes, the Giovanni de' Medici family had gotten what they wanted. Now every tithe paid to the church, every confession fee, and every sacred donation flowed directly into the books of the Medici Bank. The Vatican was no longer a holy place, but a branch of the Medici banks in Florence. The Medici family now financed not only kings, but also the eternal fate of souls. When the Medici took control of the Vatican, they didn't just start managing the gold. They established the first global data network in history that operated through threats and blackmail. The double-entry accounting system they invented recorded not only money, but also the darkest weaknesses of those in power. Medici bankers read letters from every branch in Europe like intelligence reports. They knew which king had taken out secret loans to spend on his mistress, and which prince was on the verge of bankruptcy. Information was a sharper weapon than gold, and they used it very well. Does this blackmail method sound familiar to you today? However, the Medici were not alone. They managed this financial aristocracy network together with the Fugger family of Augsburg in Germany and the Spinola clan of Genoa in Italy. These families were the BlackRock or J.P. Morgan of the 15th century. They established a center of power above states, limitless and unaccountable. The Florentine art and magnificent cathedrals we admire today were, in fact, the greatest PR campaign in history, designed to cover up the crimes of this enormous financial syndicate and to sanctify blood money with aesthetics. The brushstrokes of Michelangelo, a famous figure of the Renaissance, which they invented for money laundering, were a vast cover concealing the dirty ledgers of the wealthy. They held the keys to the continent's gold reserves and ensured that every war and every cathedral was built according to its own terms. The Medici dynasty fell, but their legacy still controls the money in your pocket today. Modern banks commission scams, unmonitored crypto assets, and untraceable offshore transfers are digital copies of those crypto ledgers written in the Medici vaults 600 years ago. The system hasn't changed, only the tools used have been modernized. But there was an older, more dangerous power that the Medici encountered in the deep archives of the Vatican, and for which they conducted secret operations throughout their lives to possess. As they examined the documents, they became more convinced that this secret order hadn't truly disappeared, but had only changed form. That colossal army that, a century before them, had indebted all of Europe and vanished overnight with all its wealth. The Templars, the Medici, as God's banker, buried their gold in the Vatican. But where did the Templars seal their treasures and their ultimate great secret? In the next chapter, we return to the oldest of seals, to that dark army that started it all. The Templars, the treasury of Jerusalem. Follow the shadows, for the truth still awaits discovery within sealed chests.